This is a story of modern-day slavery and the criminal organization that steers it to American shores. A cunning mastermind supplies the cash,
You, out the car!
bankrolling betrayal and murder on 2 continents. Will police and Interpol crack this global network? Jurisdiction? The world. When crimes are committed, an international organization unites police officers to deliver justice. Interpol investigates. In shadowy ports along the east coast of the United States, a perverse form of the American dream plays out. Chinese immigrants smuggled into the country sell their lives to Chinese gangsters. The value of these clandestine operations, $3 billion a year worldwide. The smugglers use many routes, but their final destination is New York City and its thriving Chinese community. This criminal enterprise finds fertile soil in mainland China. The Tiananmen Square massacre in 1989 began a huge crackdown on personal freedom and sparked a flood of migration from mainland China into British-controlled Hong Kong. Every day, Hong Kong authorities brought hundreds of illegals into camps before deporting them back to the mainland. A second wave of mass migration begins in the late 1990s as the official handover of Hong Kong to China approaches. Thousands of Chinese citizens turn to the smugglers, called the Snakeheads, named for a deadly predatory fish, for a chance at a new life in the West. Most have no idea they are buying into an entirely new set of dangers. The migrants pin all their hopes on a one-way ticket to American prosperity.
Human smuggling has been very lucrative. There can be no doubt about that.
Over the last decade, Agent Todd Bancroft of Hong Kong Interpol has witnessed the explosion of the human smuggling trade and the desperation of its victims.
Our intelligence indicates that the snakeheads or the syndicate masterminds have been charging up to US $45,000 per head. And when you take into consideration that in mainland China, most people earn less than $1 per day, then it's a phenomenal figure.
Recruiters find no shortage of villagers willing to pay a steep price for a shallow promise. But pulling it off requires a complex criminal network.
They have to have a source country, the ability to identify folks that they're going to transport.
John Imhoff, former head of Interpol's U.S. office.
You have to have a smuggling route where you have the access to cross the borders, and then you have to have a destination point where those people can be secreted and the money can be collected for the delivery.
The recruiters tell people that if they come to America, they can easily become wealthy.
Before they ever, step on the soil of America, they fantasize a lot.
Stephen Wang reports for the Chinese-language newspaper Xintao.
They fantasized about easy living, very easy to make money. In a few years, they can be able to buy a one-family house, air conditioning, every room, 2-car garage, very happy.
But as soon as their feet touch American soil, they're over their heads in debt. They'll spend up to 7 impoverished years working to pay the snakeheads off. If an immigrant can't earn her passage, the snakeheads go after her family back in China. It takes just a phone call.
They will say they do not have the monies ready, and that's the torturing part, come in, painful enough to scream, so the other side can hear it.
Once is sometimes not enough. The gangsters will repeat the tactic until they've squeezed every dollar they can get.
The family, knowing that they are getting tortured or maybe gonna get killed, they would go out and borrow money if they do not have anything. They would call all the cousins, distant cousins, every one of them come up with a few $1,000s to bail this individual out.
These Chinese gangs use violence as a weapon. They'll kill you if you don't play ball. This is generally an ethnic-on-ethnic crime. So once they transcend their own borders and they're in another country, they lose the ability to communicate with anyone. They don't have law enforcement contacts, and they become isolated and dependent on their captors.
The immigrants can't go to the police because they're here illegally. And besides, they have an inherent distrust of all authority.
Unfortunately, we were brought up not to trust the police. We were brought up the police are corrupted. We were brought up that they are evil. So it's very difficult for the police to tell, to recruit or to talk to somebody who happens to be a victim of a crime or witness a crime. We learn how to mind our own business, to keep our mouth shut.
The gangs know it and exploit it viciously. If a smuggled immigrant tries to slip the gang's grasp, her punishment will be swift and unrelenting.
Females will be sexually harassed or assaulted, or sometimes gang raped in front of everybody.
Of the many Chinese gangs in New York City, the Fuqing gang claims the biggest stake in alien smuggling. The Snakeheads conduct their business carefully. They use their connections to organized crime in China and the United States to smuggle in hundreds of thousands of illegals every year. One of the most powerful snakeheads, a man named Wang Uchui. He masterminds lucrative smuggling deals, trading human cargo with other snakeheads. Wang claims to be a construction worker and restaurant employee. He relies on the Fuqing gang and its 27-year-old leader, AK, a convicted felon who served time for extortion. In 1988, Ake was deported, but he soon came back and resumed his criminal business. Ake depends on his lieutenant, Xinjian Lin, to do his dirty work. "30-year-old Lin uses violence and torture to carry out his boss's orders. And behind it all stands the formidable Sheng Chuiping. They call her Big Sister Ping, and she bankrolls the whole thing. She's worth an estimated $30 million. Sister Ping manages to wield enormous power without ever dirtying her hands. For more than a decade, she has run a souvenir shop and a restaurant in New York's Chinatown. But her main source of income comes in under the counter. She operates an illegal money transfer business that immigrants use to send money back to China. The service grows so popular that the nearby and legitimate Bank of China has to offer new customers free televisions to compete with her operation. This 43-year-old illegal immigrant was smuggled into America in 1981. Soon after, she and her husband began bringing in huge illegal shiploads of Chinese citizens. Some think she's a saint, helping families come together in the prosperous United States. Others, including the police, think she's a virtual slave trader. The INS nailed her once and convicted her of smuggling. She's already served 6 months in prison.
From what I heard from other people from different sources, I believe she is a smuggler with a strong connection to the frigid gang, the underworld.
Sister Ping has the money. The frigid gang has the means. And together they plan a major score. Now they plan to move almost 300 Chinese immigrants. The smugglers expect to pull in over $9 million. Sister Ping agrees to share a healthy cut of the profits with gang leader Ah-Kay. But his lieutenant, Xingjian Lin, will receive only his usual rate as an enforcer. They outfit a rundown freighter called the Golden Venture for this new smuggling operation. The ship leaves Bangkok on February 14th, 1993, and stops off in Pattaya, Thailand to pick up 90 passengers. 2 weeks later, it arrives in Kenya to pick up 190 more passengers. Then the freighter heads for Boston. Months before the ship reaches the American East Coast, Lin corners his boss for more money. He tells Ah-Kay that if he doesn't get a bigger share, he will leave the gang and take members with him. But Ah-Kay refuses, setting the stage for a showdown.
So Xingjian Lin wanted to take over the gang from Ah-Kay.
Former assistant prosecutor Bill Murray.
They had the Golden Venture coming in, 300 illegal immigrants on that ship, $35,000 apiece. Do the math. Because whoever controlled those 300 bodies and the $35,000 that each one represented was the one who was going to control the gang.
Ah-Kay knows that his rebellious Lieutenant Lin now poses a threat. One that he will have to deal with, and soon. Gang Lieutenant Lin contacts his own enforcer, Kim Sin Lee, aboard the ship. It's time for Lin to take over Ah-Kay's business. Lin orders the enforcer, Lee, to divert the ship from Massachusetts to New York, where his men can unload it. Lee and Lin agree to wait until the Golden Venture draws closer to shore to make their move. The captain and crew suspect nothing. They stay on course to unload the ship off the Massachusetts coast. Below deck, the months of living in squalor have taken their toll on the immigrants. Many have dysentery and are constantly seasick.
I came across with somebody that, do not have enough water to drink and stole a bottle of water, and somebody has to break his arm. I know some females that have to, trade sex for food. It's not pretty.
Ake learns that Lin plans to seize control of the Golden Venture. Enraged, he strikes fast and calls in a hitman to assassinate Lin. Within Fuqing, an all-out gang war is about to erupt. Whoever wins the fight for control of the gang will inherit the lives of almost 300 people steaming across the Atlantic. An Asian crime syndicate capitalizes on the dreams of hopeful Chinese immigrants. And the wily Big Sister Ping pulls all the strings. 2 months before, the Golden Venture leaves the Far East and picks up almost 300 passengers. They're heading towards America. The conditions on the freighter are squalid. But for most of the passengers, the arduous journey is a small price to pay for the promise of a better tomorrow.
The most basic motivator for illegal immigrants to leave their country is survival. They're trying to escape extreme poverty or governmental oppression, so they're willing to take the risks. Ironically, they often end up in worse situations such as slavery when they're finished the immigration process.
In New York's Chinatown, the battle for control of this smuggling operation spills onto the streets. The leader of the Fuqing gang, Ake, has ordered a hit on his lieutenant, Xinjian Lin, for trying to steal control. Ake's hitman takes out Lin's 2 bodyguards, but he runs out of bullets, and Lin escapes. Ake knows that his man got away, and that means all-out war within the Fuqing gang. Fearing Lin's revenge, Ake meets with his brothers at his New Jersey home. He gives them instructions for unloading the Golden Venture and leaves the country. Detective Thomas Goldrick investigated the gang murders.
Ake feared some sort of retaliation. We believe Ake left for China after the January murders simply due to the fact that Xinjian Lin had escaped.
The escalating gang violence in Chinatown attracts the attention of the media. Reporter Stephen Wong.
When San Francisco Chronicle interviewed me, I described alien smuggling during that time was the best business for any underworld.
On April 28, 1993, the San Francisco Chronicle breaks the story of the human smuggling trade and gives the secretive Sister Ping prominent ink. This once low-profile crime becomes front-page news. With the Golden Venture just weeks from reaching the United States, Sister Ping can't afford to let authorities see any more of her shiploads of illegal immigrants. The captain of the Golden Venture, an Indonesian named Amir Tobing, receives orders to wait off the coast. He agrees, even though food and water aboard ship are critically low. In his move to take over from the Snakeheads, Lin calls Kinsin Lee, his enforcer aboard the Golden Venture. He tells him to order the captain to take the ship to New York. But Captain Tobing refuses, and his crew forces Lee off the bridge. But Kinsin Lee isn't taking no for an answer. He commandeers 12 Chinese passengers. then arms them with guns, knives, and even sticks. He forces them to storm the bridge of the Golden Venture. In a matter of seconds, Kin Sin Lee and his men seize the ship. They handcuff Captain Tobing and hold him in his quarters. Kin Sin Lee, the enforcer, takes control and orders the first officer to steam ahead to the United States. He informs Lin that the Golden Venture will be off the coast of New York City within a week. But Lin has some unfinished business to settle first. He has to kill the men who tried to assassinate him, Ah-Kay and his brothers. Then he can seize control of the gang, the boat, and its $9 million human cargo. He believes Ah-Kay's clan is hiding at his house in New Jersey. Ah-Kay and his brothers stand between Lin and a $9 million payday. The freighter Golden Venture approaches the coast of New York City. The value of its human cargo, over $9 million. But a war is raging within the Fuq Ching gang over control of the ship and its cargo. Lin and his followers storm the suburban New Jersey home of gang leader Ah-Kay. They gun down all of the gang members inside, including Ah-Kay's brothers. But Ah-Kay himself is gone. He's fled to China. Police arrive in minutes.
It was a bloody, brutal crime scene. We observed a dead Asian male by the front door. He had received numerous gunshot wounds along with stab wounds. We had 2 people in the basement that were duct taped and shot. And also another Asian male who was found on the street about a block away from the crime scene, also shot numerous times. There were well over 400 pieces of evidence. Handguns, a machine gun, hunting knives, serrated saws, handcuffs.
But additional evidence suggests the killers didn't have time to cover their tracks.
There were gallons of gasoline that were brought in because they had planned to subsequently burn the house down to destroy any evidence they might have left behind.
In the affluent, normally quiet, suburb of Teaneck, New Jersey, the murders shock the neighbors. Witnesses quickly give police a description of the van. Police radio the van's license number and description to all officers. They put up roadblocks along the Palisades and check every vehicle looking for the van. Caught in the dragnet, Xingjian Lin and his gang. Officers approach the van warily. Right away, they see blood on the men inside. They order everyone out for a search.
You, out the car! Close the door! Get on the ground! On the ground!
They question every man, but nobody's talking. Police arrest the gang members on the spot. Suspicion, homicide. The New Jersey Crime Lab analyzes the blood swabbed from the suspects. The DNA is a match with the victim's blood samples. Ballistics also ties the weapons to the gang members. With this evidence, authorities charge them with multiple counts of homicide. Investigators still don't know the motive, and the suspects still won't talk. But the physical evidence gives police what they need. Meanwhile, the Golden Venture nears the coast of New York City. Lee, the enforcer, tries in vain to reach Lynn on the radio.
The impact of the murders in Teaneck as it relates to the Golden Venture were profound. Zindan Lynn and all of his people were arrested at the George Washington Bridge within 15 minutes, leaving no hierarchy left in the Fuqing gang in the eastern United States. There was no one to direct the offloading of the ship, to give instructions to the people that were responsible on the ship.
With Ake in China, Lin in jail, and Sister Ping staying out of the public eye, the crew and passengers on the ship idle off the coast for 13 days. Food and water are running out. Then, in the early morning hours of June 6th, the on-duty alarm sounds at the Coast Guard station in Brooklyn, New York.
It was kind of a breezy night. It was clear visibility, so we would be able to see very easy. It looked like a routine sort of boater in distress kind of call.
Coast Guard officer William Mundy is one of the first to arrive.
I had no idea what we were about to face until we got close enough to see the people jumping off the boat and into the water. Then we knew we had a bad situation.
200 yards off the New York shore, the Golden Venture runs aground on a sandbar. Dozens of people scramble over the decks and throw themselves into freezing 5-foot swells.
We could see all the people on the deck, the people in the water. We knew that this had to be some kind of illegal alien operation going on right away, because these people were just running to the side of the boat and jumping into the water without looking at it, without anything. They were just getting off the boat. Nothing was slowing them down.
The ship's engine, still on full throttle, futilely churns the ocean as its enormous screws bite the water.
Most people went to the front of the boat because it was closer to the beach. The ones that went off the back, they went through the screws.
Coast Guard and police helicopters hover over the boat, ordering the passengers to remain on board.
Stay on board. Do not jump off. Repeat, stay on board.
But panic engulfs the ship as terrified passengers leap into the violent seas below. While authorities in a New Jersey suburb grapple with a bloody Chinese gang-related homicide, the freighter Golden Venture runs aground in New York Harbor. The ship carries its cargo of nearly 300 men and women who entrusted their lives to human smugglers known as Snakeheads. Coast Guard and New York police helicopter pilots call for assistance, but they watch helplessly as frantic passengers leap from the stranded ship. Emergency personnel care for those strong enough to make it to shore.
It looked like chaos. We see people lying down, could not tell whether this person's still breathing or not. And then later on, I find out this guy's dead.
Despite rescuers' efforts, the current slams bodies against the jetties. 7 people die.
I could see this massive group of people that was growing as more and more law enforcement responded and more aliens were pulled off the vessel or out of the water.
Special Agent Karen Pace investigates the disaster for the Immigration and Naturalization Service.
Many of the aliens, as they before they jumped, they bagged up what few items they had in plastic bags, and they jumped overboard with those bags. But being the water was so rough, they couldn't maintain holding that and swimming. So these bags of items would wash up on the shore.
When the INS questions the passengers, they answer only one thing: political asylum. They don't mention the ship's crew or the criminal events on board. Someone had clearly coached these passengers into collective amnesia.
When I asked them who's the smuggler or who's the recruiter, if you do not know who's the smuggler, they will hesitate. They will pause. Then they will try to tell you something else. And they will try to tell you that, I love this country. I love America.
The INS takes 276 people into custody. Buses bring them to nearby Fort Tilden Military Reservation for processing and questioning.
Watch the bus, make sure nobody gets off.
To get the full story, investigators separate the crew from the passengers.
The crew was Indonesian and Burmese, so they looked a little different and were dressed a little differently and were more easily to identify.
Once they isolate the crew members, investigators try to determine who was responsible for this death ship.
We asked them questions like, who gave you permission to go on deck? Were you allowed on deck? Who told you when you could eat? If there was a fight on board, who enforced discipline? Were there fights on board? One crew member stood out a little differently because he was not Indonesian or Burmese. And he claimed to be a passenger only. But we suspected this was not true, and that person subsequently was identified as Kinsin Lee, who was the chief smuggler on board the ship. There were people who were not there on the beach June 6th, who actually were the smugglers and organizers, who were the masterminds behind this smuggling venture. And those are the people we really wanted to identify and arrest and bring to justice.
Two of the snakeheads behind the shipment, Big Sister Ping and her partner in crime, Wang Chui, see the disaster on television. Wang Chui disappears in New York's Chinatown. Big Sister Ping escapes to China, hiding out in her native home in Fujian province. She continues her smuggling operations without missing a beat. The INS secures a warrant to search the ship. Pace's team combs the Golden Venture.
The living conditions on the boat were terrible. When you look at the boat and you see the way these people lived for several months on this ship, how does one human being do that to another?
The choking stench of urine and vomit fills the hold. There is only one toilet. Very little food or water.
They were truly victimized by their own people, and that's what I really am amazed at, the level of exploitation.
Agents scour the Golden Venture, and they find a lead. It looks like a list of names and phone numbers.
This list that was uncovered, which was in poor condition, was written in the Chinese language, including phone books and scraps of papers with telephone numbers.
Investigators rush the documents to the forensics lab. Before the INS can translate these scraps of paper, they need to dry and preserve the evidence.
What did he do with the passengers?
Pace continues interrogating Captain Tobing and the crew. And the story of Lee's mutiny unfolds. The ship's first officer told the INS what happened as they approached the shore. Lee's men warned the passengers that the ship was being deliberately run aground. Anyone who could swim was told to try to make it to shore. The others were ordered to stay on board until the Snakeheads came to pick them up.
Political.
But as the Golden Venture rattled and shook, the miserable passengers dashed towards the door of the hold to what they believed was freedom. Once the ship tore into the sandbar, panic took over. Even as Pace and her team untangled the story of the Golden Venture, the investigation continues at the beach. Within days, authorities pull 3 more corpses from the water, bringing the total to 10 dead. Still more remain missing, and investigators start piecing together the story.
We had a homicide investigation and an alien smuggling investigation. So we want to identify the Snakeheads and arrest them.
As the forensic scientists begin to translate the documents from the ship, they give Pace a solid lead. The names of 19 Snakeheads, including Wang Chui.
We saw his name and a list of people under him. Then we compared that to the ship-to-shore records, and that showed a telephone number that was subscribed to by his wife.
Pace and her agents hit the streets in Chinatown to chase the lead. Finally, authorities know the names of the Snakeheads: A.K., Wang Chui, and Sister Ping. They expand the manhunt internationally, calling upon Interpol to find the criminals and bring them to justice. Ten people die when the Golden Venture, a freighter loaded with human cargo, runs aground in New York Harbor. INS agent Karen Pace has learned the names of the so-called Snakeheads behind the deadly voyage. A.K., the leader of the Fuqing gang, has left the country. Interpol has alerted its offices around the world to track him down. In New York City, the circle tightens around the criminals behind the Golden Venture. The INS traces snakehead Wang Chui to his girlfriend's apartment in Chinatown. In April 1994, Karen Pace and a team stake out the apartment.
We were sitting there for several hours when we observed them go into the building.
INS agents rush in behind them.
INS, open up! INS, open up, now!
They tear up the place looking for Wang and question his girlfriend. Wang Chui, the powerful snakehead, cowers in a closet. During his interrogation, Wang Chui gives up another name for the INS to add to their list of suspects: Sheng Chui Ping, the woman known as Sister Ping. Authorities know the name. She's already served 6 months for smuggling aliens. INS agents now intensify their search for the Snakehead mastermind. Sensing the fallout from the Golden Venture disaster, Sister Ping has already left the country. Interpol issues a red notice for Sister Ping, alerting authorities worldwide about a warrant for her arrest for human smuggling. From her previous conviction, authorities have her fingerprints and mugshot on file. But now she's out of their reach, almost 7,000 miles away in her native home in Chiang Mai, China. She hides in her luxurious 3-story pagoda, financed by smuggling profits. Sister Ping protects herself by bribing local officials. She's conspicuous, but untouchable. Hong Kong Interpol also receives a red notice for AK. Now Interpol catches a break. An informant tips them off that AK is living comfortably in the western district of the city. AK is arrested without a fight, and they extradite him to the United States. His conspirators are already serving time. Wang Chui receives 10 years after pleading guilty to smuggling and manslaughter charges. Xing Jianlin, 4 life terms plus 40 years for murder and kidnapping. And AK is sentenced to 20 years for racketeering. But Sister Ping, the big fish, is still at large. In all, 22 people serve time for crimes related to the Golden Venture disaster. 10 passengers die, and 6 remain missing. Life for the nearly 300 victims of the Snakeheads remains difficult. For those surviving the horrific journey from China to New York City, less than half remain in the United States. Many endure several years of detention, and more than 30 live in limbo, not knowing if they will be sent back to China.
And there are very good reasons why the immigration laws exist. But at the same time, we're human beings, and there's a certain amount of compassion that extends to people who are in a situation where they're merely trying to survive. It's a difficult equation personally, but it is one that has to be met and has to be met with compassion.
The tragic death of 10 illegal immigrants aboard the freighter the Golden Venture tears the lid off the lucrative underground industry of trafficking in human beings.
Golden Venture is like an alarm that, waking up everybody, but it's been shut off almost immediately. People don't want to know there's an alarm. People still want to go back to sleep.
International police know that Sister Ping is still busy. She travels freely, using 3 passports, and continues her smuggling operations. But Interpol does not give up. 7 years later, in April 2000, agents discover the name of Sister Ping's son on a passenger list for a flight from Hong Kong to the United States.
International cooperation in this case was very important. The United States law enforcement officials, together with Hong Kong officials, managed to pinpoint her and pinpoint her location. We obtained a domestic arrest warrant to arrest Chang, and that put the whole thing in action.
11 agents converge on the scene, intent on nailing the elusive smuggling kingpin. They know this might be their only chance to catch Ping while she's vulnerable. Local police search the crowd at the Hong Kong airport, hoping to spot her. Sister Ping carries 3 fake passports from Belize, Hong Kong, and the United States. She claims it's a case of mistaken identity. But her fingerprints tell a different story. Finally, Sister Ping, Snakehead, is hooked. But proving her guilt in court is another matter. Although Hong Kong returned to Chinese rule in 1997, the extradition treaty between Hong Kong and the United States remains in effect.
My unit within the Interpol division was specifically responsible for the extradition of Cheng Choi Ping to the United States. She was quite a tough cookie, but in the end, justice prevailed and she went back.
In July of 2003, 10 years after the Golden Venture ran aground, Sister Ping returns to New York City to stand trial for her crimes. She faces charges for alien smuggling, hostage-taking, and money laundering. Ironically, even after the Golden Venture disaster, some in the Chinese immigrant community still refer to her fondly as Big Sister Ping.